A big surprise emerged and left a deep emotional wound. Jungkook, a figure who has always been known as tough, was said to be deeply shaken just because of something that seemed simple, something that HYBE actually forgot. This incident was not just a trivial detail, but a signal that invited critical questions. How could such a small thing that should have been taken care of be overlooked by such a big management? Even more shocking, in this stressful situation, Taehyung was suspected of uttering a sentence that was so sharp and full of meaning. "This is no longer our place, Kook." A statement that not only triggered wide discussion, but also raised a wave of emotion that was hard to contain among ARMY. Was this sentence just a momentary expression, or did it actually contain a hidden message about internal conditions that had never been revealed? The public reaction could not be ignored. Many fans felt that HYBE's negligence was not something that could be taken lightly. Wasn't an organization with a global reputation supposed to take care of small details concerning their artists? How could something so simple escape attention, making Jungkook feel unappreciated? This question invited deep reflection. Was there something bigger deliberately hidden behind this incident? Taehyung, with his straightforward statement, seemed to want to send a signal that something was no longer aligned between BTS members and their agency. But was that true? Or was this just an overinterpretation of a fragment of words that seemed to come out in a moment full of emotion, anger, sadness, and confusion mixed into one in the midst of public discussion? ARMY on various platforms such as TikTok, YouTube, and even Twitter busily discussed this incident. Clips, live snippets, and long speculations filled timelines, yet the truth remained blurry. Did Jungkook really feel neglected? Did HYBE deliberately forget something so important to him? Or was it just a technical mistake that happened to occur at the wrong time? Every possibility felt reasonable, yet none truly gave a complete answer. This was what made the issue even more tense. The public was led to keep guessing, without clear certainty. Taehyung, who had always been known for his empathetic nature, seemed not to remain silent. The words he spoke seemed to represent frustration not only felt by Jungkook, but perhaps by himself as well. "This is no longer our place, Kook." That sentence shook many, because it sounded like a form of resistance, as if there was a distance that was growing wider between the members and their agency. Was this an early sign of a big shift that would shake BTS? Or just spontaneous emotion that happened to be spoken in a moment of tension? The fact that this statement came out in front of the public made its impact even greater. ARMY was divided. Some saw it as a real sign that there was a serious problem that could no longer be hidden, while others judged that all of this was just drama exaggerated by the media and the fans themselves. But wasn't it natural for such questions to arise? How could someone like Jungkook, who was so professional, show his vulnerable side in front of the public if there really was nothing that truly shook him? And how could Taehyung dare to utter such a provocative sentence if there was not deep disappointment behind it? This issue became more complicated because of the absence of clear clarification. All parties seemed to choose silence, as if handing the narrative to the public to debate. But here the big question arose. Was their silence a strategy deliberately designed to create sensation? Or because there was indeed a truth too risky to be revealed? ARMY, who were used to being critical, could not simply accept all this without questions. Were we witnessing a real moment of internal crisis? Or was this just fabrication to keep the world's attention on them? Many visual pieces of evidence spread, from Jungkook's gloomy facial expression to Taehyung's bitter tone of voice. But this evidence opened more room for speculation than provided certainty. Did that expression truly reflect disappointment, or just physical exhaustion? Was Taehyung's bitter tone an honest outburst of emotion, or merely the interpretation of viewers carried away by the atmosphere? Wasn't it true that in the entertainment world, every detail could have many meanings, depending on how we chose to interpret it? The truth became even more blurred when social media magnified this issue without filter. Every account quickly made its own analysis, building narratives sometimes more dramatic than reality. This brought us to a deeper question. Were we seeing facts, or only reflections of our expectations as viewers always hungry for drama? Wasn't it possible that we ourselves unconsciously enlarged a small wound into a great tragedy only because of collective emotional drive, but on the other hand, completely ignoring the pain shown by Jungkook and Taehyung's harsh statement was also unwise? Because perhaps this was indeed a real signal that something was wrong in their relationship with HYBE. The question was, how big was that mistake? Was this just a small problem that grew due to mismanagement? Or was it an indication that the members had truly lost a sense of belonging to the place that had sheltered them all this time? If indeed so, then Taehyung's sentence could be an early warning of a major split that could no longer be avoided. For ARMY, this dilemma grew harder. Should they fully believe what they saw, or still maintain a skeptical attitude? Should they defend Jungkook and Taehyung unconditionally, or wait for stronger evidence before stepping further? These questions were not only relevant to understand the current issue, but also important to shape how we think in dealing with any information in a digital era full of manipulation. In the end, this issue was not only about Jungkook feeling hurt or Taehyung uttering a pressured sentence. More than that, it was a reflection of how information could shape public opinion quickly, without clear certainty. ARMY now stood at a crossroads. Were they witnessing a real moment of fragility in BTS's internal relations, or just becoming victims of a narrative deliberately created? One thing was certain: this incident had shaken trust, raised questions, and forced us all to reflect further. Was it true that HYBE forgot something so simple, or was there a bigger strategy behind all this? Was Taehyung's sentence a signal of resistance, or just coincidence magnified by perception? And most importantly, were we truly witnessing reality, or merely drama designed to keep captivating the world's attention? All these questions would not be easy to answer, but one thing was clear: this tension would not end yet, and the public would keep waiting for answers that might never truly come. When news about Jungkook feeling shaken because of something simple allegedly forgotten by HYBE grew louder in the public space, big questions arose and demanded immediate answers. Was this incident truly real, or just fabrication carefully arranged to attract attention? In the whirl of issues that became harder to distinguish between fact and narrative, the public seemed forced to accept raw information without the chance of deep verification. Here lay the crucial point. Was it true that a simple detail that should have been part of the attention of management, as big as HYBE, could be overlooked, or was there a hidden agenda unspoken? Skeptical attitude became a necessity in facing this phenomenon. How could a global organization with such a large management network make negligence that looked trivial, yet had such a big impact on Jungkook? Wasn't it possible that this narrative was deliberately twisted by social media to build drama? ARMY who watched clips, read comments on Twitter, or watched long analyses on YouTube had to ask themselves, was all this truly representation of reality, or merely reflection of expectations and thirst for sensation? When Taehyung uttered such a shaking sentence, "This is no longer our place, Kook," public interpretation grew wild. But here lay the dilemma. Was that sentence truly spoken with the intent of conveying resistance to the existing condition, or was it only a momentary outburst of emotion that happened to be heard in public space? The fact that this sentence was highlighted and debated across platforms showed how great the power of media was in shaping perception. Yet, was that perception aligned with reality, or did it only distance us further from the truth? Critical reflection was needed to assess whether this issue was just sensational news blown up. Was it possible that this seemingly dramatic event was just a small part of the dynamics of professional relationships that usually happen between artists and agencies? Wasn't it natural for every work relationship to have tension, and was it proper for us to immediately interpret it as a sign of a big split? In other words, had the public gone too far in drawing conclusions only from a piece of words and video fragments circulating on social media? We could not close our eyes to the fact that this information came from sources often not strictly verified, such as TikTok, Twitter, or live broadcast snippets easily twisted. The question was it proper for us to build full belief only based on fragments separated from their original context? Wasn't this risky to drag us into wrong understanding and distance us further from the real facts? ARMY, as a global community with very great influence, now faced an important test. Would they immediately believe this issue without confirmation, Or would they choose to wait for more valid clarification before taking a stand? What if this entire narrative was only the product of media sensationalism to create a wave of mass emotion that could increase interaction, views, and commercial profit? Hadn't we often seen how similar issues were produced, enlarged, then in the end disappeared without explanation? It could not be denied that Taehyung's sentence left a deep emotional trace, both for Jungkook and for ARMY who heard it. However, the question to ask was, did we truly understand the full context of those words? Or did we only interpret what we wanted to hear, then weave it into a big story shaking public opinion? In other words, who actually controlled this narrative? The artists concerned, the agency that sheltered them, or rather we ourselves as consumers of information hungry for drama? It must be emphasized that being critical did not mean rejecting the emotions arising from this incident. On the contrary, with skepticism, we could place those emotions in a healthier framework so as not to be trapped in manipulation of information. Was it true that Jungkook was so shaken because forgotten in a simple detail, or was there another layer of meaning unseen by the public? Did Taehyung truly want to deliver a message of resistance, or merely spoke spontaneously in a moment full of pressure? The public must dare to ask further possibilities. What if this entire drama was deliberately created to keep media spotlight focused on BTS? Wasn't the entertainment industry often using emotional moments to maintain attention? And were we as consumers of information ready to accept that perhaps we had become part of a big game designed to benefit certain parties? Every time a big issue emerged, there were two paths the public could take: swallow all information raw and sink in its emotions, or weigh each piece of information carefully, question its authenticity, and not easily believe in unverified narratives. In this context, the second choice was far wiser, though heavier. Because wasn't it dangerous if we allowed ourselves to be constantly controlled by issues that might only be hoaxes carefully polished? Until now, we only had fragile pieces of evidence, which triggered more speculation than provided answers. Then, the final question we must reflect on together was, were we truly witnessing the fragility of internal relations between Jungkook, Taehyung, and HYBE, or were we only consuming a narrative created for sensationalism? Was this incident a painful fact, or merely a hoax cleverly packaged to look convincing? If so, then vigilance was the only way. ARMY must always remember that not everything seen truly reflected reality. Critical questions must always be asked, doubt must be maintained, and reflective attitude must be the foundation in judging every information. Because in the end, what we believed would determine not only how we understood BTS, but also how we placed ourselves in a world full of information continuously produced, engineered, and questioned.